they were like getting close to. They were talking about like whether or not they're gonna have to put her down because they couldn't. Nobody would take her. And then I don't know. I just felt like the universe. I never had a pet. I've never had a dog, but I just felt like the universe was telling me. Oh, I was just gonna throw it down and throw my stuff on it. I just felt like the universe was telling me, this is your dog.
Yeah.
You're going to take this dog. You're going to get her the surgeries. You're going to take care of her. And that was it. So I don't know why. I just said yes. Just like I said, I've never had a pet. I just was like, okay, I guess this is my dog.
How many surgeries?
2, right out of the gate.
Oh, my goodness.
She's had some other stuff here and there, but like for the most part, it was just those first 2 surgeries that she needed. She was peeing blood and shivering, like in pain all day, and then she had cancer on her mammary glands because I think they were using her to breed. So they were, they just bred her, and when she got cancer, they dumped her.
Oh, poor thing.
So now she's got it pretty good. She's got like a great life. She's been all around the world.
She's a lucky one now, yeah.
I know.
I saw in all of your recent posts that you're taking her everywhere with you.
She goes everywhere, yeah.
That's awesome.
She's been everywhere. All right, Bubbles.
We're very excited to have you here today.
Thanks. No, thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's great.
Thank you for coming.
You have my friend Serge on.
Yes.
Yeah.
How did you and Serge meet? And is that a long friendship, or did you meet more recently? Okay.
I guess like probably the past few years. Yeah, we became friends over the past few years. I mean, we had a lot of friends in common. Obviously, both Armenian, and then he started helping me when I was starting to post about Artsakh and Nagorno-Karabakh and what was going on. So I was like, hey, can you proofread this? Because before I enter the ring, I want to make sure that everything's in order because I know that people are going to come after me. So I just want to make sure that and so he would kind of proofread stuff, and we had a lot of friends in common.
Yeah. So you had Armenian friends in common or industry friends in common?
I had some musician friends in common, and being Armenian, it was also like, why the hell are we not hanging out? So I called him up and was like, hey, we have all these friends, you know me, blah, 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 blah. Can I buy you lunch at the Carousel? And he was like, yeah. So we met up and went to the Carousel.
It's so funny. Carousel's like the spot that everybody gets together. Yeah. But it's so good.
It's the best. Well, I mean, are we going?
Technically, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So good. Because I was going to say, I don't want to not say, but when I was growing up, my mom made me sojuk and eggs. So they made a Carousel, it tastes the way my mom made it. So I have to go because it reminds me of being a kid and my mom feeding. Also, a lot of the way that they cook the food is the way that my mother did, So yeah, the Carousel is my spot. But I like Rafi's too.
Oh yeah, Rafi's is good cool. Too.
But Carousel, this year for my birthday, my girlfriend, she knows me, so she called them ahead of time and set up my birthday party.
Your suju.
Yeah, totally.
That's the staple meal.
Got to.
Yeah.
Of course.
That's so nice. Do you cook Armenian food yourself?
No, but my mother's Armenian, and that was one of those ways that the culture was passed down. And so my mother, whether she knew it or not, when it became time for her to start cooking for a husband, cook for her kids, she was cooking Armenian food, So, she tells stories about she would wake up my dad early on Sundays, or he woke up early, whatever. But they would get up early on Sundays, and she would make him help her make all the lamajuns for hours to go into the freezer for the week. Yeah. So I grew up, there were always lamajuns, and so to this day, it's when I come home, my mom's like, "What do you want to eat?" I'm like, "You know what I want to eat? I want lamajuns. I want sojuk and eggs." So So I grew up with with Armenian food. It's that was how that culture kind of stayed alive. That and all those stories that I didn't understand as a kid until I was older. Of course, when you're a kid, you don't know what the adults are talking about, and then one day you're like, "Who got whipped in the head with a ball and nails? Who was that?" And they're like, "That was your grandma? Who did that?" And then you go and read the books, and you're like, "Whoa." So I think there's a moment in an Armenian's life where you understand what the adults were trying to shield you from, and then it's on. Then it's like, then you realize how the world works. Then you start seeing behind the curtain a little bit, and and then, well, here we are. So
I've admired your work for so many years, but I had no idea that you were Armenian until maybe a couple of years ago when I saw your Instagram post about your great-grandmother.
Yep.
I couldn't get through the whole post in one read because I was getting choked up so much. And I mean, it's hard to imagine that any person could go through such a thing. Only so many Armenian people went through the same thing.
Yeah.
For people who don't know about it, can you share your
Sure.
great-grandmother's story?
Yeah. So my great grandmother's name was Tervez Darakjan, and she was born in Harput, which is Western Armenia. But when I fill out a form or 23andMe, I have to write Central Turkey, but it's Western Armenia, and 1915, under the veil of World War I, the Ottoman Turks came into Harput and just killed everyone, razed it to the ground. Her husband was, I believe, murdered before. They took all the men away and said, oh, you have to go do these military things over here. So they kind of took all the men away and killed them and separated them from the women and children so they could come into the villages and do what they wanted. And as the story goes, my great-grandmother was shot, but she didn't die. And while she was on the ground, the Turks killed 8 of her children while she laid there. And then they left the 9th child, the infant, to starve to death in the crib. And she got up off the ground and took a piece of clothing from each one of the 8 children and then strapped the baby to her back. And she made it out of the village past the death marches, which, if anybody doesn't know what those are, there's a great book by Professor Peter Balakian called The Burning Tigress, which is a really, really difficult read. But it's these accurate accounts of like what was going on, and the death marches. I mean, it's just awful. They just chained the women and children together and marched them out in the desert and released the Kurds, who were the enemies of the Armenians, and gave them military coats and horses and allowed them to do whatever they wanted. And women were dropping babies into the tall grass because they didn't have enough food to eat. I mean, it was just like hell on earth, like the worst hell you can possibly imagine. So my great grandmother, because she was thought to be dead, got past those marches to the Euphrates River, and she put the baby on her back and swam the river to safety. And when she got over to the other side, that 9th child, the baby drowned. So, when you really start thinking about things in 3 dimensions and the mechanics of that, it's like, you think about that scene in a movie, and you think about trying to get, hoping you have an actress who can portray that scene, and then you say, and then you think, you kind of come to your senses and go, no, this really happened. And so, you also think about like that in 3 dimensions, and you think you have this baby, and like you have to not let the baby go, and like you're in the woods, and you have to bury the baby so the animals don't. I mean, it's just like when you start thinking, it's just like. The white of the page, in between the black letters of like the story that I grew up hearing, when you really start thinking about the mechanics, it's insane. So after that, the story goes, she lived in a cave with other refugees, and somehow came out of the cave. So I don't know if it was like the bullet wound got too bad, or was infected or something, or she had to come out, and then she got rounded up and was put into a relocation camp, I guess. And there were thousands of German soldiers that were stationed in the Ottoman Empire during World War I, because the Turks worshipped German military might, so they invited them all down. Those were their allies. And so I guess my great-grandmother went to work for one of these Germans, kind of like if you've seen like the movie The Zone of Interest that came out last year about the Germans who are living outside the walls of Auschwitz. So you have this camp for the Jews who are being exterminated in the Holocaust, and then you have these kind of like officers who are living in houses, and then like you had like refugee Jewish women who are working in the houses for these officers, or like Schindler's List. Like there's a scene, where there's a servant in the house for this German officer. So I guess my great grandmother would have been like one of those women. She wound up pregnant by the German officer, who then went back to Germany after the war, and she's pregnant, and so she gives birth to the baby that was my grandmother in this camp, and then hid out in the streets of Constantinople until she could get word to one of her sisters, who then the sister and the husband sent money to her to get her on a boat with the baby to come to Ellis Island. And then she went to Worcester, Massachusetts, where the other Armenians were, and was married to this Armenian man. That's that's kind of the short version of that story, and that I heard as a kid, but really didn't fully understand until I was an adult. And then and I would post every year about my great grandmother's story, because bizarrely there's still people out there who either deny or are allowed to deny, and it's not taught in American schools, which is bullshit. And because of the way the world works, oil, military interests, yada yada, human rights are on the back burner, and unfortunately the Armenians have been on the other side of that consistently. And so people say, oh, you're using your platform, you're an activist. It's like, no. I'm just telling the truth. I'm just telling the truth about my great grandmother on the day every year that commemorates or brings to attention the eve that those attacks by the Ottoman Turks started. So that's the date when you say it, and that's the date when I make sure that people know that what she went through was not in vain, that what was done to her family was done, but no one could have foreseen that 110 years later, her great-grandson would be here with a microphone in front of him telling her story. So I really do feel that she's watching, that she's proud, and I feel like, and what I've learned is that for all Armenians, that generation didn't want to talk about it because it was so horrible, but we as Armenians, we know what happened. We know where our ancestors went, and we don't need Turkey to admit their wrongdoing in order to heal. It's like we all know. So let's be the generation that does talk about it, because it is important, and that is how healing happens. And I really do believe that the generational trauma is a real thing. And there's been plenty of studies that I could cite about all of that, and in order for us to move forward, we all have to, we've got to talk and tell our stories. And so by me then talking about my story publicly, people stop me in the street, people stop me in airports, people stop me at restaurants, and they want to come up and tell me their story. And so we get to have those conversations, and then so if me telling the truth has allowed other people to feel like they could talk about it, or their parents to talk about it, their grandparents to talk about it, then it's worth it.
Well, and not only are you posting about it and talking about it, you just came back from Washington, advocating for Armenia, the Armenian cause, and for the release of Armenian prisoners of war.
That's right. Yeah, it's easy to say, let's let go and let's move past it, and it was a long time ago, and I have friends of mine who are Turkish, and they had nothing to do with anything, and it's easy to say that. It's hard to say it when what went on in Artsakh and Nagorno-Karabakh, when something like that happens in the present day, it just reactivates everything.
Oh my God! Yeah.
And then you see that the world, the church, nobody's standing up for it. It's not in the news unless you look for it. And I was there in Washington to beg that someone does the right thing. Just do the right thing. Do the right thing. human rights are being violated. There's an ethnic cleansing that happened that started in 2020. People died. People were pushed out of their home, and nobody did anything. And look, I'm not blind. I understand how the current geopolitical situation works. I get it. I know who's in bed with who's selling weapons to who's selling energy to who's allowed to play both sides. Like I get the whole thing, but it's not right. So, and again, I think there's a lot of people that don't fully understand what's going on, or it's like trying to wake people up to understand that there is good and evil. There's good and evil. There is good and evil. Good and evil. It's a real struggle, and it's going on, and it's happening to people that I care about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, most of us know someone who has been affected by this because Armenians it's such a small population. You're not removed from this. It's like everybody has a family member or a friend, somebody who's affected by it.
Yeah. Yes. And even if you're not, it's like, I mean, there was a friend of mine that I went to high school with who asked me what I was doing in Washington. And when I told him, he was like, "Oh, I didn't know there was an Armenian genocide." And my friend is Jewish. So it's like, how do you not know? How do you not know? Like, the Holocaust happened because the Turks weren't punished for the Armenian genocide. But how do you not know that as somebody who grew up understanding what that is? But also, again, it's like, well, how does Israel then sell weapons to Azerbaijan? Like, it's so odd to think that a people who understand what it's like to have their ancestral homeland taken away and to defend their current home, to then find themselves on the other side from the people who preceded them in terms of that type of tragedy. So, but again, it's money, it's military interest, and that's the way the world works. But is there some way that that the right thing can be done? That peace can happen, that differences can be solved, because at the end of the day, it's just like, you're born, you live for 80 years, you're gone. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, who cares?
Yeah, I find myself constantly thinking about that Martin Luther King quote. I don't remember exactly how he said it, but basically that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's exactly that, when nobody cared about the Armenian genocide, then the Holocaust happened.
Yeah.
And then this time, when Artsakh was invaded by Azerbaijan, backed by Turkey and by Syrian mercenaries, then the invasion of Ukraine happened shortly after. Because again, you see that if the world's not reacting...
Yeah, I mean, it's so complicated in that part of the world. It's so interesting that the Armenians fleeing east from the Turks then wind up being given sanctuary by the Russians, and then with the breakup of the Soviet Union, all of a sudden it's like they're left out. They're left out for the wolves. So I don't know. It's the Armenians, like when you go to Armenia and you go to the museums, or you look at all of those ancient maps where the world is flat and the earth the ocean is a river, and you see Babylonia and Sumeria, and Armenia is on all of those maps. It's like there's an ancient people. It's an ancient culture, and the only thing that kind of gives me some peace at night is you think about some of the things that William Soroyan wrote, where basically it's like they'll never be able to get us all, and whenever two Armenians meet somewhere, whether it's a pub or they're laughing or telling their stories, I think about that. And I think about the diaspora and how important it is to have especially the community out here in California and other places. And, it's so important for Armenians to get together. And obviously, you gotta fight for human rights, but at the same time, it's the Armenian culture and language and food, it'll keep going forever.
Was it your first time in Armenia?
That was my first time, last year.
So tell me about your trip.
Gosh, it was amazing. It was really a spiritual experience for me to go to Armenia. I stayed in Yerevan, and gosh, I ate lamajouns for breakfast like every day that I could. There's a little place right around the corner.
Yeah.
I would take Bubbles to walk in the Swan Park with the Swan Lake.
Yeah.
And it's funny, there's like a mosaic donated by the Megarian family that make the rugs. And it's a dragon rug. And it's a rug that my mother bought me. So I actually have that exact rug in my house. And she had got it there for me years ago. And so, I'd walk Bubbles around the park, and then we go get lamajouns and coffee. And, it was the kind of thing where day one, I order the coffee, and the people behind the counter kind of look at me, and they realize I'm speaking English, and, okay.
And you're way taller than everyone
Way
there.
taller, yeah. I'm like a mutant. And I'm carrying this little dog. And I'm ordering 2 coffees. And, they ask my name, and I say Joe. And the other one, I say Caitlin, my girlfriend. What's your dog's name? Bubbles, And so we're going over all that. The next day I came back, they look at me kind of like funny. And then when they hand me the coffees, they don't ask for my name, but they have Joe written in Armenian.
Oh.
And they have Caitlin which is like a weird name, I think, for Armenians, but they had, to the best of their ability, they spelled Caitlin on the cup. And or it said Joe and Bubbles. Like it was like they knew, cute. You know what I mean? It was like I was there for 24 hours and it was already like, welcome, you belong, we know your name, we know what you're ordering, all that. It was nice. Everywhere we went, it felt like that. When I went to Megarian, I bought a bunch of rugs, bunch of everything, and then open these big doors and there's this huge feast. And then we sit down and eat and talk and tell stories. Where's your family from? Where's mine from? Here's this, here's that, Because I think also to, sometimes I think like in other parts of the world, if you're a nationality, you're only that. If you're Armenian, you're only Armenian. If you're from Spain, you're Spanish. So I think they're not used to like Americans being like all kinds of things, and so I think because of my last name, obviously people were surprised that I was Armenian. But then I had dinner with the Armenian president, went to his house to eat, and very formal dinner, wearing a suit. Everybody's wearing suits, and this big tray comes out of bertush, which is all of the herbs, the fresh herbs, and the fresh cheeses, and the lavash, and you put the bread together.
The best.
But the plate comes down, and I'm like, and I look around because you eat with your hands, and I'm like
in a suit.
We're all in suits, and I'm like, you're supposed to use it, what? And they saw me kind of looking around, and the president starts laughing. Then he says something to the translator, who then says, he sees you looking around, and he says it's okay if you eat with your hands. And I went, okay. So we all laughed, and I went, all right, great. So then I, made my, my wrap, and then he starts laughing again, and he says something to the translator, and the translator says, He says he knows you're only 1/8 Armenian, but he says the way that you make your bertush, you're 100% Armenian. So we all laughed.
That's hilarious.
So yeah, no, it was very very welcoming. I mean, it was all of those things. I had a lot of memories from growing up as a kid. There's people on the street in Yerevan that are. They have pomegranates, like bowls of pomegranates, and they'll make pomegranate juice for you. And it reminded me when I was a little kid, my mother would lay out a newspaper and she would peel pomegranates and feed them to me when I was little. So there's pomegranates, and then also the pomegranates are carved into all of the architecture in the temples and the monasteries. And then then it was like going out into see the monasteries. So every day we would get up early, get in the car, and go drive hours to go see all of these different monasteries, and I wanted to see them all. And there was a flood at one point. Like, it was raining so hard that it was flooding and we needed to get back to the city. But I really wanted to see this monastery in Sanahin. And so I said, let's try to hit the monastery and then we can go. But like, let's try. So we tried to race against the rain. But it was just like this monsoon. We drove up the mountain, got out of the van, pouring rain, gone into the, these old stone ruins basically. And I turned this corner and I saw this room that had an icon of the Virgin Mary holding the baby Jesus, which is pretty much in every church anywhere. But this one was different. The image was like the exact pose of one of the only two pictures I have of my great-grandmother. So I have two pictures of my great-grandmother holding my grandmother before she got on the boat to come to America. And it was the exact I pulled it up on my phone, and it was the exact positioning of the jaw, the hands, the babe, like exact. And I it was like I got hit by lightning, because again, it just struck me about something about her story came to me, which would have been her on this dock holding this baby, getting ready to get on this boat without a father. And I thought of this word that my mother said. So my mother, her mother, my grandmother, was that baby, that German Armenian baby born in the camp. And we talked about generational trauma a couple minutes ago. And my grandmother died at age 40. She died very early. She lived half of her life battling a host of autoimmune conditions. And we know now that autoimmune conditions can be caused by generational stress. And so she died very young. And when she was dying, my mother was 8, 9 years old, 7, 8, 9 years old. And she remembers the old woman, my great-grandmother, the survivor, coming back to the house to take care of her. And she would sleep on this daybed in the living room. And my mother had a panic disorder. And I think that's also like an echo of that generational trauma. Like when she would hear thunder or lightning, she would get scared and she would run out into the living room where her grandmother, the little old woman, was sleeping on the daybed. And she would hide under the bed. And she said the old woman would get out and she would pull my mother out from under the bed and stand her up. She'd get down on her hands and knees and put her hands on my mother's hips and start chanting in Armenian. And my mother said it was like she pulled the fear out of her. Like she was magic. Like she had some kind of magic. Everything she'd been through, she had magic. Like the people in Worcester wouldn't go to the doctor. They would come see my great-grandmother. They'd line up on the porch because she had like power. And she remembered that when my great-grandmother came back to be with my grandmother while she was dying, she would say this word that my mother remembered, reshaped, my angel, my angel. She called her angel. So when I was sitting there in Sanahin looking at this icon, in the same pose as the Virgin Mary with baby Jesus, with no father present, and I thought to myself, like she felt like the baby was an angel that was sent to her to make her survive. Because who would want to live after everything that happened to her? But she felt like the baby came from God. It wasn't some sort of burden, or it wasn't the German baby or whatever it was. It was her baby. And the baby had nothing to do with the good and evil, the battle that was going on, or all of this atrocity. Like the baby was just being born, and it was her job to then welcome this baby. And that became like the thing that she loved the most in life. And so when I thought about that in Sanahin, it was like finding the Rosetta Stone to spirituality. Like to me, like all of a sudden everything became clear, like life became clear. Like, again, like you're only here for a certain amount of time. You don't get to check out. You have to accept your burden, whatever it is. And then you have to just do the best that you can with that, and understand that I think in that moment she also didn't blame God for that all, because I would think, why wouldn't somebody blame God? Because you hear that, like, why? How could there be a Holocaust if there's God? How could there be a genocide if there's God? God didn't do all of that. These human beings did it. But God was there for her to pray to try to help her get through. There's still a way to tap into this thing. Now, this thing wasn't going to interfere, but it's still like she found the strength to get through this and felt that what she was given from God was this baby. The baby was the thing from the German, that this baby then was the thing to make her want to live, want to survive. And because she did, then that baby winds up dying. So she watches the 10th child die, which is also insane. You know, my great-grandmother was a saint, and she suffered like a saint. But my grandmother lived long enough to have my mother, and then my mother was affected, obviously, by all the echoes of that. But then I get born, and then I wound up being in the position, I've spent my whole life learning how to be a storyteller. And so I wind up in the position where I can go and talk about it, or I can go to Washington, or I could say, and so it, to me, all of a sudden at this age in my life, it all makes sense. Like, a lot of things make sense as to why I am where I am. And I never would have thought in a million years that with the last name I had, and, growing up, it was like, hey, Joey, it was all like Italian, like that kind of, funny stuff. Yeah. But to think that I would be, the shepherd of this story, my great-grandmother's story, that's really important in a global context, because there's a lot of people who learned about the Armenian Genocide because of my Instagram posts, or because I was on Finding Your Roots. Like, they didn't know it even happened. It's like, okay, well, I guess I have to keep talking.
Wow. At what point do you feel like it was really activated in you, where you felt like, okay, I really have to, I'm driven to act on this. I have to talk about this, and it's a part of my responsibility?
Yeah, I don't know. Somewhere in my 20s, I started reading Peter Balakian's books. I read The Black Dog of Fate. I read The Burning Tigress, which again is a really heavy read. And then I started interviewing all my family members who knew my great-grandmother and my grandma. Like, I felt like I need to get all these stories down before everybody's gone. I don't know if this is a movie. I don't know what it is, but I just need to get all of these stories. And so I think there was like an activation in that. And then I started like hanging out in Glendale like a lot, and like, going to the Americana and like walking around and going to Carousel and trying to going to Armenian bookstores and trying to find books about Germans in Armenia and things like that, but then I started trying to get on this genealogy show. Not necessarily because of the Armenian stuff, but because I wanted to find out who this German was. Yeah. I was just interested. Like, who is this? Yeah. Of course, when you start pulling German family tree sweater strings, you need to be ready, because there's a lot of, for every victim, there's a perpetrator. And I happen to be made of both, right? So, and that in and of itself is like interesting to think of when it comes to history and what it means to be human and like live the human experience. So, but then I spent 10 years trying to get on a genealogy show, and I couldn't get on one because the technology just wasn't there. The science wasn't there. And then after 10 years, Finding Your Roots called, and they said, all right, we think we can do it. We think we might be able to break down some walls here. And so I went on the show, and they did. And then that episode really became an Armenian-centric episode. I think Tony Shalhoub is Armenian, part Armenian. So they had like a tiny little blip of Armenia before me, but really my episode was the first one that really delved into the Armenian Genocide. And it was all of that research that I did and all those interviews that I did was what I brought to the show. So, a lot of people were like, oh, I heard you found out you were Armenian on that show. And it's like, no, I always knew I was Armenian. I was telling them, my great-grandmother's story.
But then you did find out that apparently your grandfather wasn't who you thought your grandfather was?
On my dad's side. Yeah, that's the other side. So, yes. So we found out who the German was. And then the other side, the big surprise was that my father's father, my paternal grandfather, who I never got to meet, was not my father's father. My father's father was somebody else. So my last name technically shouldn't be Manganiello.
Yeah.
It should be something else. And then there was another paternity issue in the tree. And so there was all of this mystery that then unfolded on my father's side. And that was so there's a quarter of me that is that I thought was Neapolitan or, Italian. That is not. It is like Irish, British. I have a historian that's been on like payroll for the past 3 years working to unlock all of these secrets.
Wow.
So it's Irish, British, and sub-Saharan African. Like not Mediterranean African, Northern African, like Africa where the slaves were brought over. So I have a whole part of my family tree are slaves from like Ghana, Nigeria, like that area. Which has been really interesting to get into. And then again, you talk about victim and perpetrator. That's mixed with what I think. I think the paper trail leads to, and my Y chromosome leads to, I think one of the slave owners and a slave had a child. And so I'm mixed with slave owner and slave.
Okay.
On that side. So it's like, there's all sorts of things to figure out.
Okay, so life lessons, change in perspective. What's the outcome of all of this that you've learned?
I mean, being a human is no joke. Like if we're all like souls floating around or part of this kind of collective soul, and then you're given the option to go for the first time or go back, and you sign up for that. You don't know where you're going to pop up. You don't know when. There's a theory that you pick your parents before you're born. You pick the souls that are going to provide you with challenges or bolster you with traits or things that you're going to need for the trip. But then boom, you're here, and go. And sometimes you're born in Armenia in 1915. And sometimes you're born in Germany in, 1919, and you're of age and, when the Nazi Party's coming. Like, you just don't know who you're, like, where you're going to be, what your experience is going to be like. And so I'm left with all of these stories that aren't somebody else's story. They're my stories. They're actually like what is a part of me, and I'm left to look at them. I mean, here's the thing. So that German, my great-grandfather, who left my great-grandmother in the camp, his oldest son, as it turns out, became an SS officer directly under Hitler. So he's carrying out the Holocaust in World War II. He's killing all of the Jews in World War II, okay? Doesn't know that he has a half-sister that was born in a relocation camp out of the Armenian Genocide. So that's a brother and a sister who don't know each other, who have never met, that are on the other side of this looking glass from each other.
That's
born in
wild.
different times. But it's like you look at her being born into this camp, being brought to the United States, having this trauma passed on to her, like growing up Armenian as this tall, skinny, blonde girl, And then on the other side of that, you have a father who sires a child while he's away at war, comes home, and then his oldest son grows up in, war-torn Central Europe. Germany was like punished heavily. I think a lot of the psyches were broken, and then this like rise of nationalism then gives him some sort of purpose or identity, and so he joins up for this gang, and then they turn on these people living within their country, much in the way that the Turks did. And all those Germans came home from World War I and said, guess what, we can get away with it. This is how you do it. We watched, we helped, we whatever. And then the next one happens. They didn't get punished. Look, we can do it too. So it's like, you ask like what's the big takeaway from all of this? It's like, that's like a great example of the fact that I can look back and see like just the full human experience in all of its extremes going on in my family tree. And I remember I had an agent at one point who was like, well, we're not gonna talk about the German thing. And I'm like, we absolutely are talking about we're talking about the whole thing. I'm uniquely positioned to talk about it. My roommate in college is he's like a Jewish cantor at the synagogue, and I love him. He's a brother. Like, I'm not my ancestors. But with that said, it's like I definitely have the survivor gene. Mm-hmm. I definitely have the Armenian survivor gene, and I definitely identify with, my great grandmother, and I feel like she's kind of been watching. This is the word for luck and fate, in Armenian, and I feel like when I was a little kid, I was always lucky, and I felt like there was somebody leading me around by the hand to where I needed to be at the right time, and the Armenian side of my family thinks that that's my great grandmother and my grandma, because they didn't get to have the life that they wanted, so their luck slid into me.
Do you plan on making a film about this?
I'm working on things, and what form they'll eventually take, we'll see. But I think about it a lot, and I've certainly broken it and started breaking it into scenes.
So how did you decide to become an actor?
How did I say? Well, I had a lot of feelings, and those feelings needed to go somewhere and be expressed. So I was a sensitive kid. I was like an empathetic kid. I could like kind of read people's minds when I was little, and it would really drive people crazy. So like, stop it, like leave me alone. Like every girlfriend I've ever had, I'm like, what happened? What happened right there? Like, leave me alone. Will you please just get out of my head and stop it? Because I can feel those shifts, mm-hmm. And so, and also, like, I love telling stories. So it was just a matter of, like, what's the best way to do that? Am I supposed to be a director? Am I supposed to be a writer? Am I supposed to be an actor? I don't know. I started really in high school making my own films. So I would write and direct films, and then I started writing parts for me, and I would start acting. And my friends were like, "You're really good. You should keep acting." And then I tried out for high school plays. And then I got them. Then the teachers were like, "You're really good. You should keep going." Mm-hmm. And then I tried out for a really great drama school, and I got in. Mm-hmm. And it was the kind of school that, like, if you get in, like, this is a really big deal. And so I went to one of the best drama schools in the world. And then so acting became like, everything's in acting. But I got to a point where acting doesn't give me enough control over the story. Sometimes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I love it. Sometimes I want more control. And I also I got back to me having things that I wanted to say. Mm-hmm. And in order to say those things in my own story, I had to start writing. And so a lot of what I've been doing lately is more oriented towards the writing and storytelling in a grander sense. So I think that's like kind of like what's been emerging lately. But yeah, so I started acting in my own movies when I was a kid, and then I got into a great drama school and did that.
I think that would actually be really great advice for anyone who wants to follow in your footsteps, because when I dabbled in acting, I was told a lot, oh, you have to pay your dues. And that's all I kept hearing. You have to pay your dues. You have to do a lot of stuff that you're not going to like until finally you come across projects that you will like. Do you feel like that's true?
100%. Yeah, you got to, you got to try to pay your bills. So, I had a teacher he was a director from the Moscow Art Theater, and he would say inside of every actor is the artist and the bills payer, and you have to make both of them happy. and so there's a lot of stuff that I was in that I'm like, man, I would not go see that or be interested in that at all. But you're just doing it, and you have to do it for free. You have to do a lot of it for free. And I try to remind people because I think that people sometimes think, well, like, basically their version of acting is just like sending headshots in. It's like, that's not acting. Acting is acting. Acting is, it's like, I know you talked to my friend Serge Tankian, and there was a portion of the conversation about like celebrity. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's so weird when you get labeled a celebrity. This is celebrity. He's a celebrity. It's like,
Yeah.
what is that? Like,
Yeah.
like, that's not a job. Like, my job, it's not a profession. You don't go to college to become a celebrity or something, or work your whole life. You know, you're an artist. You're trying to express yourself in a way that someone else would identify. And I'm not saying you're thinking about what they want. It's just that you're expressing your own experience, and the hope or the understanding is that somebody else out there is going to understand you, and then you're going to feel less alone, and that's the whole point. And if you can get paid to do that, that'd be great. You know, there's a lot of bureaucracy in today's world, because there's a lot of money to be made from artists. You know, and so there's a lot of people that move in that are not necessary to the process. You know, I was trying to talk to somebody the other day about, you know, directors, and it's like, listen, there are directors I love, there are directors I really don't like, and or haven't liked working with, and you know, they're not necessary to the process of acting. You know, I mean, it's nice to have one, especially one that's great and understands actors and understands storytelling and has a vision. But like, you need two actors on a stage saying words or not, or telling a story, and that's it. That's kind of like all you need to do it. So everything else is just an add-on. Agents and managers and lawyers, and I mean, get me as much as you can, but like at the end of the day, it's like, you can't get lost in the headlights, you know, of all of that. And so, yeah, I think, you know, it's important. Like, people, like younger people, or, you know, people who are starting out, they're like, what do I do? I'm like, do a play. Yeah, but it's LA. Like, nobody goes to plays. I'm like, well, sorry. I don't know. Move somewhere where they do go see plays. But, you know, I started in theater. I started in plays, and, you know, being able to tell a full story over the course of a night, like, that's an art form. Like, and do it for free, and hope that people come see you. But even if they don't, just, you know, you have to get up there and act and have people come see your work.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting is some of the projects that you've done, some of the films you've done, like Magic Mike, True Blood, they have a cult-like following.
Yeah.
So that really does put you in this category of celebrity where people are so interested in your life beyond art. They want to know everything about your personal life. They want to know what you ate, what you drank this morning, what's in that mug right now. I mean, how...
It's coffee.
Yes,
Yeah,
always
it's an Americano,
coffee.
black coffee.
Yes.
Yeah.
But seriously, how do you deal with that?
It's tough. I mean, that's the part of it that's tricky. I mean, you know, it's a double-edged sword, because, you know, again, if I haven't reached a certain amount of success in my career, then nobody's, you know, there aren't many people listening to what you're saying. So if your goal is to deliver a meaningful or subversive message to as many people as possible, something that's going to make them think, that's something that's going to make them feel, then yeah, like, you got to be in the Magic Mics, you know? But with that said, it's like, you know, there's Magic Mike is full of like great actors. I went to drama school with Matt Bomer, and Steven Soderbergh is an Oscar winner, and his producing partner Greg Jacobs, who directed Magic Mike 2, is amazing. And so I got to work with the really amazing people. And True Blood was, you know, Anna Paquin has an Oscar, Alan Ball had an Oscar, you know, so there were lots of Emmys and Tony winners and West End of London, you know, theater heavyweights. So, you know, I'm getting to work with like really, really great artists. It's just, you know, I like to gravitate towards popcorn for smart people, you know, where you can try to do both at the same time, ideally for me. But that's not always possible. But I've been lucky that I've been able to do that. You know, I think that the original Spider-Man with Sam Raimi was a great movie. It's a great story about a kid in high school coming of age, when you really boil it down. Yeah, he puts on this red and blue suit and swings around on, like, you know, spider webs, but like, when you really boil it down, it's about a kid coming of age and feeling insecure, and we all identify with that. And True Blood was about marriage equality and addiction and racism in the South, and, you know, all sorts of like heady topics. And the original Magic Mike was about like the financial crisis of 2008, and it's like Saturday Night Fever, where you're the king in this bubble, but then you're a complete loser in real life. And, stuff that people can identify with. So, but with that comes a certain amount of attention, and there's a certain amount of responsibility having a microphone in front of you. And, I've certainly said things publicly that maybe I shouldn't have said, or came back to bite me in the ass that, it was like I should have directly spoken to that person rather than hinted at something or said something in a roundabout fashion on air that they knew was about them and they got upset about.
Anything we can talk about specifically?
Well, I mean, I think my point is that if I talked about it specifically, I'd be getting myself in trouble. And I've kind of, I've learned that lesson by now to a certain degree. I've also been on the other end of it where, people have said things to, ingratiate themselves towards certain audiences at the sake of my character. And then I'm not one that likes to, I don't like to fight that way. I certainly don't like to fight in public, in the press for sure, but I've had to then fix things, or say things. And, the damage is already done because there's a lot of people that already form their opinions or, walk through the supermarket aisle and go, oh, look, that's what he's up to. And it's like, nope. But, you can't win everybody. So, it's like you just kind of hope that, the people that matter are the people that know you kind of understand your character. But yeah, I mean, if it has to do with my character, then I have to step in, and sometimes that's a pain. Because
so you do feel like you have to clear things up sometimes?
Yes, yeah. You have to. You have to sometimes. Sometimes you have to. I don't like to talk about things. I don't think it's anybody's business. It's not anyone's business. It's not. It's nobody's business. But sometimes you have to step in and you have to say certain things because, before things get out of hand, you just have to be on record. As like, hey, that's
but then
not
what
right.
happens when there are like photos taken from seconds of your day in your life, and then there are stories written about it, and then there's like a whole misconception about you?
Yeah, well, again, it's like you have to step in sometimes. But then when you step in, those people don't like that. So then you get, like I've had my share of fights with like, people that owned magazines, and I've let them know that I did not appreciate some of the things that they said, or that the things that they said were a lie, or I've had to threaten libel and get a lawyer and lawyer up and do that kind of thing. I've also had people threaten to write things or release stories about me that weren't true, and then I've had to go pay $20,000 to get some lawyer just to make sure that it doesn't wind up in a Google search when you Google search my name. You know what I mean? Stuff that's just like, ugh, you don't think of. I mean, I'm complaining here about something that has a lot of upside, so I just want to be very clear that, I'm in no way like saying, oh gosh, poor me or woe is me. But there is, I mean, when you do things of note, I mean, shoot, there were people that protested Mr. Rogers' memorial service and his funeral. They were outside with signs and protesting him because he had an actor on his show who was gay at a time when, that wasn't okay. And he was supposed to represent the church. And that, so there were like parents sticking protest signs, picketing with little kids, forcing little kids to do this against Mr. And it's like, you could be Mr. Rogers, who's like a saint, and somebody's going to have something to say.
Yeah.
You can I can post something about my great-grandmother and her story in Armenia, and some denier is going to get on and write some nasty comment. And it's like, hey, like I know what the truth is, and I hope that people feel like they can trust me. I mean, I've tried not to use the press to mislead, but
Yeah.
Sometimes,
but you come off as a very kind but no bullshit person. How does your but
I mean, there's a point when I lose my patience. There's a point when too much is too much, and I think that sometimes people think because you have broad shoulders, you can carry more, and sometimes I don't want to. You're taking things for granted.
But in this industry where there's a lot of politics, does your personality help or get in the way? Because on one
I
hand,
try to
I'm
stay
sure
out of politics. I mean, I really do.
I mean, even in saying that you don't like a certain director and you don't really feel like they're necessary in the film, does that...
But I've also worked with great directors that
Yeah.
really help your performance. But I've
Yeah.
also worked with directors where everything they say, I really have to be guarded against them because there's some pseudo Machiavellian jerk who thinks that they need to talk down to actors, or really and truly they don't like actors. So it's a constant like translation where, again, that like you're trying to like emotionally intuit where they're coming from and kind of see what's behind that, you know? Because it's like, otherwise you're just going to feel like you're ducking punches the whole time that are like throwing your performance off. So you have to like get into sometimes you have to get in a bubble where you're ignoring the director. But like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Like, you got to protect your performance because I'm the one on camera that's going to look like an idiot if I listen to the wrong note, or they're trying to throw me off because they hate actors and think that they're all sissies and they're going to talk to you that way. And it's like, I'm sorry. Should we, why don't you show up tomorrow and put on some headgear and we'll see what happens, So you have to be protective of, it's funny. It's like as an artist, it's like this little dog, right? So I protect the little dog. No one comes near this little dog. No one hurts this little dog. Like, I would turn John Wick and hunt you down. If like this is my Hreshtag, the dog. And so, but that's kind of a metaphor for like the artist. You have to be able to open this thing up and show people the most vulnerable like part of you. And there's all that nonsense floating around, especially like in LA. There's all the money, there's all the chatter, there's the tablets, there's the photographers yelling stuff at you as you're walking down the street, filming you, banging on the car at the airport, F you, son, might be a picture, all that kind of stuff. And you want to close it and you want to get mad and you want to fight, and it's counterintuitive to this thing. So, and the same thing with like a director that's like really not in tune with you as a performer, or doesn't trust performers, or doesn't understand what an actor does. They're going to talk to you a certain way and you have to shield. But then you have to then turn to the camera and open this thing up and show the camera, but he's behind the camera, so you don't want to give you don't want to give him the performance, but you're tanking your own performance and your own. So it's like this hard. So you have to learn how to communicate and say, hey, can I talk to you for a second? I get it. I'm not going to respond to that. Okay, so, and I can tell you X, Y, Z, Y, but don't.
That requires a lot of self-control.
It's hard. It's sometimes hard. Especially, I think it's counterintuitive to being a big guy, too. Because as a big guy, you want to pick up this table and go, and it's like, no, you have to use your words and you have to communicate.
Well, you mentioned insecurities. It's hard to imagine a big, successful guy ever having had to deal with any kind of insecurities. What would you say was the toughest thing that you had to overcome?
Well, thanks, I guess. Thank you for that compliment. Well, I think a lot of success is born of insecurity. I think, like if you don't feel like you're good enough, or you don't feel like, you've made people proud or whatever, then unfortunately, as a young man, you'll wind up doggedly trying to make that happen. And you'll put yourself into situations that aren't good for you in order to get that. And I think as you get older, you, whatever successes they are, you wind up being able to like kind of relax about all that and, do things for yourself, It's like, do I love acting? I don't know. I mean, like, I love telling stories, I do it for a living. So I guess, it doesn't define me. Like, I guess it's like I'm an artist who likes to express himself, and I like I like for people to see my work and have it affect them. And that's not to say that like the bread and circuses of it all isn't completely valid, because I do think people need distractions from like the heaviness of what's going on. It can't just be heavy all the time. Mm-hmm. I host a game show on NBC. Like, please, like I was Big Dick Ritchie and Magic Mike. Like, there's bread and circuses all day. Don't get me wrong. Like, I have a comedy coming out on Netflix. Like, I love comedy. Like, I love making people laugh, taking their minds off of things. Entertainment for entertainment's sake. I love all of that. But with that said, it's like, I think I've learned the older I get to have a good perspective about it, because at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, all that stuff is amazing and wonderful, and I feel like I'm good at it, and I feel like I can do it well. So you should hire me, because I'll do an amazing job for you. But going to Washington, D.C. and advocating for the release of 23 hostages in Baku who are being charged as terrorists, which is bullshit, without due process, in a global, on a global stage, and nobody's coming over there to help them. And people have been killed. There's an ethnic cleansing that went on. And it's like it's hard to not value that much heavier than anything else I could possibly be doing. So, again, in the grand scheme of life, it's like, you're here for a certain amount of time, and like, what am I supposed to be doing? And I understand that, like, I am lucky that I do love my job. I'll say that. I love my job. I do love getting to do it. But it's not who I am. And if I couldn't do it, or it didn't pay my bills, I'd be doing something else, and I'd be just as happy.
What would you be doing?
Hunting criminals. No, I don't know. Maybe. No, I'd be writing more. I'd probably run for office.
Oh, would you?
I think. I don't know. It keeps getting brought up to me. I'm like, no, I have too many tattoos. They're like, that doesn't matter. I'm like, okay. No, I don't know. Who knows? I don't, I've also learned at my age that any sort of planning or thinking of where I should be or what I should be doing is like, that's my ego thinking I should be over here. And so I just listen to the wind, and it tells me where to go. And then I go over there, and then there's a big neon sign, and it says you're supposed to be here, you're supposed to be doing this, and then I go, okay, and then I go for it. So being here talking about advocating for the release of Armenian POWs in Azerbaijan with a tiny 5-pound chihuahua on my lap was nowhere near where I expected my life to be at this point. But here we are, and it's absolutely where I'm supposed to be, 100%. And I'm very excited about where it goes from here.
Before we continue, let's take a quick moment to chat with this episode's sponsor, personal injury attorney and founder of ANLAW, Nalbandian. Congratulations on earning your title as super lawyer.
Thank you.
Personal injury is such a competitive field. Do you feel like you have to also work on visibility and self-marketing?
Absolutely. I feel like it's a saturated field.
What's one thing people say after a car accident that can completely ruin their case?
I'm so sorry.
So why?
That could be used against you. When you say things like that, the person on the other side is going to run to the insurance company, and that's the first thing that they're going to say. And that can be used against you.
Have you ever had a client who messed up their case without realizing it?
Yes. I've had a client who the insurance company likes to play games. They like to call the client and ask them questions and pretend that they didn't see representation letter on file. I had a client that actually spoke to them, gave a full statement to the insurance company, and completely ruined their case.
I've heard that posting on Instagram can actually hurt your case.
Absolutely.
I've read that people actually get in trouble with gym selfies too. Like, it seems so innocent, but they go to the gym, they take selfies working out, and then they claim to be injured. And
well, it does make sense. If you're injured, you should not be at the gym doing reps or lifting heavy weights. But people do that, and actually it really hurts their case.
Make sure to visit ANLAW.LAW for more info. That's ANLAW.LAW. What would you want your legacy to be?
Oh, man. I don't know. I don't know, like people crying at my funeral or something like that. Like, sure, like just crying, like they miss me so much, it's so great. I don't know. No, I mean, listen, I mean, I'm sick of me a lot of the time. I'm sick of talking about me, sick of being, whatever. I just want to break. And so, anytime I can be of service to somebody else, be of service to the dog, walk the dog, feed the dog, take care of the dog, take care of people, teach people things, so, anytime I can pass on experience that I have to help somebody else, like that's, to me, that's what it's all about. I'd want to help somebody get further than I ever could. So I think that in the end, hopefully that'll be what it is. But,
Where do you think that need comes from? I think about it all the time because, when you're in your early 20s, you're still trying to figure life out. You're trying to overcome certain insecurities and fears, figure out who you are, what you want to do. And then in your 30s, this is coming from my experience and obviously just friends that I've talked to, you kind of evolve as a person in a way where you start really wanting to help other people and it stops being about you and you're just like, I want to do something that's going to be impactful. It stops being about more selfish things and serving your own ego and more about how can I do something to make life a little bit better for other people. Where do you think that comes from? Do you think it's an artist thing or do you think it's family history?
I don't know. I think, I think being a slave to your own ego is painful at the end of the day. I think it's painful. I think it can get you to painful places in life. Looking around at what everybody else is doing and trying to assess what the best version of you to present to them is exhausting. And all it's going to do is create an avatar that people are going to, an avatar that then is going to suck up all the love from everybody. And it's going to leave the real you feeling like unloved because it's going into this representation in your own mind of what you think you're supposed to be. So it's like when you have to try to like let go of that stuff, and, I was a real overthinker when I was young. I would overthink. I would think, plan. I need to want it so bad. I was an upstream swimmer, like if you're not killing yourself, you're not doing it hard enough. If as a kid playing football, if my head didn't ring when I hit somebody, I didn't hit them hard enough. And you get older and you go, I can't, that's not sustainable. And I've got to stop trying to just doggedly swim upstream in the face of everything. And I've got to just like let go and go where the river's going to take me. And I'm going to find that like, I'm going to be at peace. I'm not going to be fighting everyone, everything. And then you kind of get a sense of purpose. And I think that like one of the best ways to get out of your own head or selfishness is to go be of service to other people and go help other people. So, for a lot of people that happens when they have kids, but you also hear a lot about like the younger generation, people having kids and then they regret it because now they can't go to Coachella or Rock the Clubs or, like you read all these articles, you're like, what do you there's like this form of postpartum where it's like regret and it's like, who cares about any of it?
Seriously.
Like, go take care of the, but I guess it's easy for me to say because, or, you know, to like judge other people who are doing that when I have this crazy story about my great grandmother who lost everything and was given this baby, and then the baby's the reason why. You just try to shield that baby and take care of it and shield it from the evils of the world and make sure that it grows up like in the best way possible and can get further than you. You know, unfortunately, it didn't have that happy of an ending, but. You know, I think about that, and I have that story right there as an example of like, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And it might not make sense in the moment. It might not even make sense in your lifetime.
Yeah.
But a lifetime or two later, because you did what you did, somebody's going to come along and they're going to try to right that wrong. You know, I got to go to the genocide memorial in Yerevan, and I got to plant a tree for my great-grandmother and my grandmother. And I got to write the inscription that's in English and Armenian. And I got to water it for the first time. And it was like, and the people there said, you know, they told me 100 times, we'll take care of this tree. We will take care of it. We will take care of it. Don't worry. You can bring your kids back here someday to see it. It's like, you know, to think, you know, the idea that it was like my great grandmother was on an island, you know, and she put a note into a bottle, and she threw the message in this message in a bottle into the ocean, and you know, 109 years later, I returned with the message like I found it, and I'm bringing it back to you, is crazy. And also the importance that there is on Armenia for, like, there is a homeland still that people can go to, and it's in a really volatile part of the world, but like, you know, there it is. And you know, I mean, to me, like, when you think about what your ancestors went through, you think about what they had to do for you to be here, which you have to go through in order to, you know, be sitting here with you. I think everything comes into perspective. I think it's hard to be worried about the wrong things if you're worried about that.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because when I was talking to our mutual friend Serge Tankian, I asked him the same thing because of that family history and because he escaped a civil war in Lebanon.
Beirut.
Yeah. So I was like, God, that has to change your perspective. When you become as famous as you become, there are a lot of superficial things that come into play, and a lot of people get sucked into it. But I feel like when you have such a heavy background, it's really hard for things like that to phase you, and I feel like it must be a part of what makes you grounded.
I don't know, there's some Armenians that have very famous reality shows, so I don't know, you know.
Well,
I mean, it just depends. I guess
Yeah.
It just depends, you know. Just,
Yeah.
You know, that's what's so interesting, is that, you know, how it kind of filters down.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I don't know them, and I don't know what their relationships are like with other Armenians, but it's interesting. It's like one of the, you're born with whatever DNA you're born with, but what makes you feel like you're a part of an ethnic group is the shared history and, you know, the culture, the food, the music, and so you experienced that, as did we. So I don't know what their experience is like, but it would be interesting to know how Armenian do they really feel, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe someday I'll, you know, I haven't really hung out with them, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I've just met them in passing, and they're very nice. They're very pleasant.
yeah,
but I
no,
don't know what their
I hear
personal stories
I hear
are
nice
like.
things, but yeah, I don't know, or how connected they feel. I mean, obviously, again, it's like, you know, I feel like I'm the curator. Kind of, I've been presented with this story, and you know, it needs to be told. So.
Yeah, but you know, it's brave too what you're doing, because I was talking to Larry King about this. Was like 10 years ago almost. We were in New York together, and I asked him if he would do something publicly to commemorate the Armenian Genocide with me. And the only thing I had at the time with me was an Armenian Genocide T-shirt, and so we took a photo with it. And he said, you know, I was threatened just for accepting an invitation to Armenia. He never actually made it to Armenia, but he said they threatened that they would behead me if I ever went to Armenia, and he had to get the FBI involved.
This was who was they? Was it the
Azerbaijan?
Azerbaijan.
Yeah, yeah. Then the following year, I interviewed him and we talked about it, and he actually talked about his experiences. And I said, it went viral, so thank you for actually bringing so much awareness to your experience and to the cause. And he said, yeah, and I continue to get more death threats. So I feel like, a lot of people might really just be afraid to publicly talk about it, as much as you do, as much as Serge Tankian does.
I mean, like I said, it's like, it's not about advocacy. I mean, or, whatever, being an activist. I'm just telling the truth. So... Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You've spoken publicly about your struggles with addiction in the past. Is that something that I can ask you about?
Sure.
Yeah. So, first of all, I think it would be really powerful to share how you were able to overcome it. But before overcoming it, how do you even decide that you have a problem? When do you feel like it's an actual issue?
I mean, nobody can tell you that you have an issue except for you. You're the only one. I mean, it's not really for anybody else to diagnose. I mean, people can definitely have opinions about what you're up to. But, no, I mean, I knew I had a problem. I knew I had, I mean, it's funny. It's like, alcohol and drugs, they're not, that's not really the problem for addicts. The problem for addicts is how they feel. The medication of choice is the alcohol and the drugs. So the problem really isn't like when you're on it, it's when you come off of it, or you try to come off of it, then it's like being without your medication. So it's like, I don't know, learning how to deal with life, learning how to deal with how you feel. Why am I an alcoholic? I have no idea. Like, I don't know what it was. I mean, I could say maybe, I was born with something that's in my DNA or it's in my mitochondria, and I felt that way before I even ever picked up a drink of, an alcohol, whatever. And that was just an attempt to treat it. And so anytime after that was just me trying to, again, treat this thing and calm this voice down in my head that I'd always heard, or this way that I always felt. And then it's fun. It's fun for a while. It's fun to not be burdened by that rock that you feel like she's snoring. You feel like you're carrying around this rock, or you have a headache, and then you take a drink and it goes away. So you're like, well, why aren't I doing this all the time? So then you do it all the time, or more frequently, and then it's like, it goes from fun to like fun with problems, and then it's just problems, and then the problems just keep going, and then you're trying to get to even keel. You're trying to get back to zero, ground zero. You wake up less than zero, trying to get back to zero, and then you're in trouble, and so then you have to come off of it, and then you have to learn how to basically spiritually heal, and then learn how to spiritually grow from there. So for me, looking back, I really feel like, as a kid, I was a naturally like kind of spiritual, emotionally tapped in kid. And I overthought, I felt too much, and everything was just a little bit too loud for me. And I just wanted the volume to turn down. And I definitely got that from alcohol mainly. And the fact is, like, to me, all of that emotional sensitivity or that feeling of like spiritual connectedness that I yearned for or wanted as a kid or kind of felt, that kind of being of one with the universe, I got a false sense of that from the alcohol. But like, during the period where I drank, I got very far away from it. And so when I stopped, I had to go back and like reconnect and pick that calling back up, like stop ignoring the call, to just be that or settle in and realize that, like, being emotionally sensitive, being that tapped in, it's not a weakness. Like that actually is something that, I've had to, that's what I use as an artist to create. So I think there's that's probably why there's a lot of artists that struggle, or at least find some substance of some form that gives them some form of peace, because it kind of shuts that thing down. And I certainly got that. And so sobriety for me was really understanding how I'm wired, and understanding what I can do to kind of stay connected, stay in the middle. And then what that opened up was really just a full-on, spiritual PhD, into the world. And I think that also my connection to my Armenian heritage also has a lot to do with that, and has really been fun to explore. Life feels like an adventure, and I'm like fully conscious for all of it.
And finally, the reason that I call this podcast But That 1% is because there's so many things that we're told are impossible or are made to feel are impossible that turns out maybe unlikely, but if there's even a 1% chance, then it's not impossible. You speaking about having the kind of personality where you're swimming upstream, do you feel like that's a part of what makes you successful because you push through?
I mean, to a certain degree, but so the tattoo I have on this arm here is it's the koi dragon. So
Very
the
cool.
story about the koi dragon, basically koi swim upstream. They're upstream swimmers. And as the story goes, the koi were swimming upstream, and there were these demons that were laughing at the koi. Like, look at these stupid koi doing everything the difficult way. And so to further infuriate the koi, the demons created this waterfall. So there's no way those koi are going to be able to jump this waterfall. So the demons would just sit there and laugh at them. After 100 years, one of the koi finally jumped the waterfall. And while it was in the air, the gods looked down on this koi, and to ensure that the koi would never have to swim again, they turned it into a dragon so that it could fly. Like it had earned its ability to never have to swim upstream again. I feel like that, and that's why that I got this, because, I was doing things in a fashion that was way tougher than it needed to be. Now, I'm kind of grateful that I did, because it made me really tough. It made me very strong, very tough, and I didn't know how tough I was going to need to be until I went through some really difficult stuff. And so I'm glad of that. I'm grateful for that, and I'm glad that I was trained from a young age to be tough. The trick was, as an adult, I now have to defend and protect that part of me that's sensitive that I thought wasn't supposed to be. If you're a man, you're not supposed to be sensitive. You're not supposed to be vulnerable. That's a sign of weakness. Somebody's going to attack you. It's like leaving a knife out with a serial killer in your house. It's like, you do not be sensitive. Somebody's going to come at you and use that against you. But you can't live life that way. So I'm glad that I was raised to be tough. There's a lot of guys out there who don't know how to be, and I see them all the time. And I think people need to be a lot less sensitive, should be a lot less sensitive, especially men these days. I think you need to be everybody needs to toughen up a little bit. But with that said, as an artist, as a human being, as a boyfriend, as a dog caretaker, it's that sensitive, vulnerable part of me that is the greatest part of me. That's the best. That's who I am. That's my soul. But I'm glad that I was raised to be tough, because you got to protect that from people. You got to protect it from the wrong people, especially now. The internet, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on, and people just vomiting how badly they feel. And I don't want to get sick by any of them. I don't want to catch what they have. So I've got to learn how to protect that, and protect her, and protect the people I care about, to protect her. So, it's I guess it's just like somewhere in that balance. And, but again, like I've also learned, I put in my dues and to a certain degree. I don't need to swim upstream ever again. I just go where life takes me, and then when I get there, I work my ass off and do the best job that I can for whoever it is and wherever I am, and I usually wind up in a place that that I like being, and I'm part of things that I want to be a part of, that I feel something about, that I'm connected to, and I know that when I'm connected to something and I'm interested in it and I'm passionate about it, then people are going to get the best out of me, and I'm going to be at my best, and therefore I'm going to be happy. I'm happiest when I'm at my best. And that's all I want, really. And just go where people need me. If that's a dog, that's a production, that's Armenia, that's Washington, D.C., whatever it is, like, if you need me and I can help and I think I can help and do it with passion, then I'll go there. And when you do that, you're not looking at what everybody else is doing. You don't care. I don't care how they're dressing. I don't care what they're driving. I don't care what they're doing. I don't care what they're in. I mean, you're human. Of course, you're going to have that ping with like, I can't believe that guy got that part. Oh my God. Like, it's just going to happen. But you know that it's not meant for you. You're meant to be over here because you're one of one. You're one of one. Like there aren't more of you. There's one of one. So why am I wasting time trying to be somebody else? I just have to be me. But how do I be me? I have to be really in tune with what this thing is, and follow it, like feel where it's pulling me.
On that note, thank you so much for being here.
Sure, thanks for having me.
I love talking to you, and I think so many people are going to be inspired by your storytelling. You're an amazing storyteller.
Thanks.
So,
Thanks.
So I'm sure people will enjoy it. Thank you so much, Joe.
Bubbles had a great time.
Yes,
too.
and thank you to Bubbles too.
You want to wake up? You want to go?
Oh, I think she's
No, it's time to go? No,
that is
she
amazing.
wants to stay. All right.
Oh, we don't mind.
Yeah.
We don't mind if she stays.
Come on. Let's go.
Goodness.
Yeah, let's go. Come on. We have to go. We have to go.
If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Your support helps this channel grow, allowing us to bring you even more engaging and high-quality content. You can also follow us across all social media platforms. Quick break to thank one of the sponsors of today's episode, MX Motor Lounge and Leasing. I've personally used their services for both leasing and buying a car, and they truly made the whole process seamless. If you're in Los Angeles and looking for a friendly, knowledgeable team to help guide you through your next vehicle purchase, look no further than this award-winning local dealership. Visit MX Motorsports for more information. That's EMEXMOTORS.com. A huge thanks to Torpedo Comics and Essentia Beauty Spa for helping to make this podcast possible. You've probably seen Torpedo Comics in your local malls, but you can also visit them online at torpedocomics.com for an amazing selection of comics and collectibles. As for Essentia Beauty Spa, their beauty experts are truly unparalleled. I trust Diana, the founder, with all of my hair needs. She's simply the best. For more information, visit essentiabeautyspa.com.